Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to Adriana for having me participate in the session. It's a pleasure. I want to share work that we have done as a collaborative effort with the Child Mind Institute, the University of Cambridge, University of York, and Dani Margulies from Paris. And I just want to mention that this work, Dr. Suk-Jun Hong, who's now a senior researcher at the Child Mind Institute, was really instrumental in the work, so if ever there are some really pressing questions, please grill him and not me. And I would also like to mention that this work would not have been possible without investigators generously contributing neuroimaging and phenotypic data sets via the ABIDE consortium. For those of you who don't know it, it's a multi-center retrospective data sharing initiative, and it aggregates more than 1,000 scans in individuals with autism and a matched group of healthy individuals across multiple sites. So autism spectrum disorder is a very common neurodevelopmental indication, and it has an early onset, and it's generally persisting into adulthood. At the moment, there's no established biology-driven treatment of autism spectrum disorder, and this has been attributed to its rather heterogeneous etiology. And this heterogeneity is also mirrored at the phenotypic level, where we observe individuals with autism presenting with deficits in social cognition, so more higher order cognitive functions, but also more low-level sensory and hypersensitivity and sensory anomalies. Overall, this is a puzzling aspect of autism because it challenges us to have an umbrella theory of what may contribute to autism. Connectome miswiring, or a typical connectome organization, is one of the prevailing themes in trying to understand what's wrong in autism. And autism is not a special case for this because there are many neurodevelopmental indications that are actually associated to atypical connectome organization. There's some support for atypical cortical network formation at the level of histopathology, but also with respect to genetic risk factors that contribute to synaptic scaffolding and the formation of large-scale cortical networks. In vivo, we have resting state fMRI, which is one of the canonical techniques to probe cortical network organization in humans. The paradigm is very simple, so it can be translated to clinical population in children. So, for example, you measure a bold resting state fMRI activity while the participant is looking at a centrally presented fixation cross. While this happens, you measure bold fMRI activity, and following preprocessing techniques, you can propagate these resting state time series on the cortical mantle. And when you inspect these slow variations in resting state functional fMRI activity, you can actually observe that there's not a random activation pattern that happens between different regions, but that there's actually a large-scale coordination of different networks, with some areas showing coordinated or synchronized activation, whereas other ones showing distinct. I just want to highlight one of the very well-established partialations from Thomas Yu et al., showing, for example, the default mode network here in red colors, and low-level sensory and motor networks in more bluish tones. So resting state fMRI is really a powerful and also a very reproducible tool, so it can be actually a good in vivo means to study connectopathy in autism spectrum disorders. There has been a large body of previous imaging studies looking at intrinsic functional network organization via the lens of resting state fMRI. Numerous studies have been published. Overall, they are supportive of atypical connectivity organization in autism, with, however, somewhat heterogeneous findings, mainly presenting, however, with connectivity reductions in cortical networks, sometimes with scattered increases of corticals to subcortical connectivity in autism. One of the most consistent findings, however, is relative to nodes of the so-called default mode network. You can see the study of Adriana on the top, showing seed-based functional connectivity reductions of core nodes in the default mode network. Somehow the heterogeneity of previous findings in autism compared to controls has been attributed to variations in image processing choices, for example, use of global mean signal correction, but also the control for head motion parameters. but also sometimes with respect to more idiosyncratic network organization in autism compared to controls. So overall, higher variability in the spatial pattern of connectivity networks in individuals with autism compared to typically developing controls. So overall, perhaps a focus on specific regions may not be the most adequate technique to look at connectivity miswiring in autism, but maybe we want to rather move towards a more system-level description of connectome anomalies in the disorder. One reference frame that we have chosen in our work is the so-called hierarchical reference frame. You have already been acquainted with the Mesulam scheme that was developed on primate track tracing studies, which posits a hierarchical differentiation between low-level areas involved in sensory processing, such as V1 and A1 on the bottom of a hierarchy, and more transmodal areas sitting on the top of the hierarchy that are supposed to perform integrative cognitive functions and also social cognitive operations. A hierarchical reference frame in autism may actually be a quite elegant way to consolidate the phenotypic expression of the disorder, because it may consolidate the interplay between low-level anomalies as well as high-level deficits in social cognition. Luckily, we have some previously established techniques to study network hierarchy through resting state fMRI analysis. I just want to highlight two methods that we have applied in our work. On the one hand, you can see on the top the application of unsupervised nonlinear compression techniques applied to functional connectome data that allows us to, in a fully data-driven way, to identify axes of connectivity differentiation between low-level sensory and motor system, here shown in blue, and higher-order transmodal default mode networks shown in sienna. And overall, this framework, although being fully unconstrained, recapitulates Mesulam's theoretical model based on cortical hierarchical organization. On the bottom-hand panel, you can see a complementary but nevertheless convergent approach, so-called stepwise functional connectivity analysis. Here you define a priori seeds, for example, in sensory and motor networks, and you can iteratively walk through the connectome and eventually converge in higher-order default mode networks. So we applied these two techniques to Abide data sets. Just a brief word of caution is, despite being very generously shared and open access and being a fantastic resource, there's obviously heterogeneity in image quality, but also in the inclusion criteria across different Abide sites. So here we focused on specific Abide subsamples that included children as well as adults, and we also performed a rigorous case screening and manual quality control procedure, both at the level of structural imaging that was used for surface pre-processing, but also at the level of functional, at the level of resting state functional MRI, in order to screen out cases that showed high degrees of head motion. Here you can see the application of the first approach. So we derived principal gradients in neurotypical controls as well as in autism. And you can see that the findings in the Abide cohort dataset, despite being of lower quality overall than the HCP, where this approach was initially championed, they converged with what was previously shown by Daniel Margulis and colleagues, and specifically by showing differentiation at the level of resting state functional connectivity patterns between low-level areas and high-level default mode areas. When you look at autism spectrum conditions, you can see that while the overall pattern of connectivity differentiation is largely identical, so also showing a shift from low-level to high-level areas, there is a notable compression in the overall gradient, suggesting a reduced differentiation between higher-order transmodal systems and lower-level sensory motor areas. And you can see this in B at the surface level by showing reduced gradient scores, specifically in default mode core hubs, together with some increases in early integration areas such as the mediotemporal gyrus as well as the inferior temporal lobe system. So now I'm going to walk you through the slide. It's a bit more complicated. Please focus on the left-hand side, showing the stepwise functional connectivity propagation pattern in healthy controls, and the slide starts at the bottom. So we systematically planted seeds in A1, V1, as well as S1, so three primary sensory areas simultaneously, and then we iteratively propagated through the connectome in sequential steps. And you can see that eventually the sensory-initiated functional connectivity propagation converges in this default mode system, so medial prefrontal and medial parietal systems. In autism, which is shown on the right, you can see that the stepwise functional connectivity pattern was more aberrant. So while showing initial hyperactivation and maybe even activation of nodes in the default mode network, you never see a selective convergence of the stepwise functional connectivity propagation to the default mode. So here we don't look at this in a surface-based coordinate system anymore, but instead in a coordinate system that is spanned by the two principal gradients of resting state functional connectome organization. So the first gradient describes this differentiation between low-level areas and high-level default mode regions, so you can really appreciate the default mode sitting on top. And the second gradient, which is also convergent with what Daniel has shown before, differentiates between different sensory systems. And you can already readily appreciate the contraction of the overall first principal gradient in autism compared to controls with default mode systems sinking down and these more low-level systems going up the gradient. On the B panel, you can see the stepwise functional connectivity propagation in gradient space. So again, on the left, showing the control pattern that really recapitulates the principal gradients when seeds are initiated in primary sensory areas, they readily propagate into the default mode system in almost a straight line. On the other hand, in autism, you can see maybe hyperactivation, but eventually some recursive and more aberrant trajectories with respect to stepwise functional connectivity propagation. So I now also have a video, so this is based on V1. So on the left, you can see the control stepwise functional connectivity propagation. On the right, you can see it in autism. So I hope this works. So you see that eventually, after a sufficient number of steps, default mode gets activated and controlled. In autism, despite initial activation of the default mode network, there's never a selective convergence of stepwise functional connectivity in the DMN. Using machine learning techniques, in our case, supervised pattern learning, elastic net regression, as well as support vector machines, so for feature selection and prediction, we were trying to predict different levels of ADOS symptom severity using our hierarchical features, so in this case gradient scores, but also stepwise functional connectivity propagation to different levels of mesolam hierarchical taxonomy. We could predict overall ADOS levels quite well, even when five-fold cross-validation was used. And with respect to the subdomains of the ADOS scales, we could specifically predict social cognition deficits as well as repetitive behaviors and symptoms, whereas our learners were less good when trying to predict language and communication anomalies. I'm not going to go into detail here, but we carried out a couple of cross-validation analysis, correcting for global mean signal regression, doing a lot of motion screening. Overall, our findings were rather robust with respect to these different analytical choices. We also replicated the findings in the second wave of Abide. So Abide comes in two waves, and there has recently been another surge in making data available, but overall our patterns of reduced gradients in autism, they are relatively consistent at the level of the second Abide wave. And with this, I would like to thank you, and I would like to sum up. So our findings overall, they show convergent evidence of a typical connectome hierarchy in autism. It could be a potential system-level explanation for its diverse phenotypic expression. That is the co-occurrence of low-level anomalies in sensory, so hypersensitivity, but also high-level deficits in social cognition. And using a machine learning technique, in this case with five-fold cross-validation, we could predict individual levels of symptom severity in our autism participants. Our findings are rather robust and replicable. In future work, we would like to explore how specific these findings are for autism, but I think this could be an interesting lead for the study of neurodevelopmental disorders more generally. Thank you. And obviously, I would like to thank so this obviously is like a team effort, so I already mentioned Suk-Jun Hong, who was really instrumental for doing this work, but also individuals from my lab and outstanding collaborators from the Child Mind Institute, the University of York, and Paris, and open access initiatives such as Abide that made this work possible. Thank you.
All right.